The Gloom Strikers are a small strike force chapter specializing in extended period assault operations, harsh environmental warfare, and combat field engineering. Both the Marines and neophytes of the chapter are constantly growing to be self-reliant and extremely handy at salvaging old equipment from any and all places on the battlefield to complete the mission given to them, including in the way of repair, mechanization, and survival in hostile environments. The chapter is proud to show their brazen and haughty heraldry on their armor, consisting of gold trim on their pauldrons, grey and green armor with black segments along their bellies and legs, a cream-colored left knee pad displaying their assigned squad number, and right knee pad displaying their company number. The Gloam Strikers consist of only a little over 100 brothers, separated into 2 small nomad companies. Each nomad company is divided into 10 platoons of 10 brothers, each platoon divided into 2 acute squads of 5 or 6 men each. Due to such lack of manpower, battle brothers across the galaxy are expected to be able to handle themselves valiantly for, in instances of extremity, centuries without assistance, contact, or communication from not only headquarters back on Arn, the Gloam Strikers' home planet, but from the Imperium itself. Each platoon commander, or captain minor, is given some degree of autonomy over the direction and ordering of his platoon when on campaign, and, as a result, these platoons have become mixed weapon groups, each fitting the needs for the task the platoon has completed the most of, or is most able to execute perfectly. The Gloam Strikers are far and away displaced on Arn, which is in the far northwest of the Halo stars, past Segmentum Pacificus. This, combined with their chapter's low population, has garnered them a lesser position within the ranks of the galactic chapters, and, as such, they are one of the least known. They whose glory is sung by their mouths alone. Generally, they are poor and struggle often to arm and fund their operations throughout the Imperium when under duress and maximum operation pressure. This, however, does not keep them from achieving much with the little manpower and supplies given to them. Their reputation is little spoken of within the mindless vastness of the Milky Way galaxy, but when they are in battle with their cousins from other chapters, their bravery is not questioned, nor is their ability to fashion a bomb from scrap and promethium. Being used to losing contact for long periods of time, in the far and away displaced areas of the Imperium and beyond, where all manner of unknown traitor strongholds, undocumented Xenos forces, celestial terrors, and warp entities lie waiting to devour all those who seek them, the Gloam Strikers have developed a quiet and firm attitude. Additionally, they have grown within their chapter culture, strong bonds of brotherhood with their superiors and commanding officers within their platoons, leading to seeing them as fatherly figures, and in cases, bonding to them in familial ties, because Gloam Strikers are not allowed to see their families once they are recruited, and their minds and memories are wiped completely clean of their past lives. Each platoon operates either conjointly or separately amongst themselves, on planets and operations alike, and character of their bonds, from brother to captain to their chapter master and chapter enforcers, is often described to be like the bond between grandfather to son, and it is often the case for superiors to write wills gifting relics as hand-me-downs or as inherited objects of power to their chosen brothers. Objects such as a sword or even skull bolts are passed down from captain to sergeant to brother. The Marines in training evolved to accept loneliness over their centuries of training, and this morose existence has gradually crafted to have many instabilities in operating with other Imperial forces as well, who are not like them and are in fact sometimes their opposites, though they often try their best to hide it. It is, although on rare occasions, a horrifying sight to see the afflictions the Astartes of the Gloam Strikers suffer from. The gene seed mutation rate for the Gloam Strikers is about 30% of each batch, mutations often varying from a faulty oculobe requiring a brother to wear constant eye protection, to speech disabilities and rare depression. They possess a great intellect in a special few. Those who show interest in machines as well, just like in any other chapter, are sent to the Mechanicum to become tech marines. The general mood of the Gloom Strikers Space Marine emanates a common despondency and severe distrust towards outsiders who are not like them. They are rude and prefer to keep to themselves, and receiving unwanted and unwarranted assistance can in some cases infuriate them and cut their quiet lonesome moods. Their lineage to the sons of Antaeus has given them a natural lesser durability to most damage. The drawbacks, however, are a great cost. Their depressed characters, quiet and lonesome minds, and quickness to fiery temper and rage, despite their generally docile nature, makes them highly antisocial. This is why their company and squad regimentation and organization has developed a culture of such familial bondage. Each squad is assigned a sergeant, often called Orange Helms because of the orange paint on their helmets' face masks. Sergeants take orders from company captains, who wear crimson helmets, sometimes with white stripes, to denote if they have had previous experiences with Mechanicus, and captains respond to the Gloam Striker Enforcer, sometimes called the Commandant, the Lord Commander, or the Honourable Preeminent. The Enforcer is the right hand of the Chapter Master, acting as his words and will. Each company as well has a great warrior and berserker, who is crowned the Distinguished Captain. There have only been 3. The third, who is still alive and has been in battle since M40, is Darvius Orlog. Distinguished Captains or Honourable Captains bear the cloak of the previous Distinguished Captain, who had in his life before his passage into the Emperor's Great Hall handed it down towards his favourite pupil to inherit his honorary title. Their helmets are painted golden as well. The Distinguished Captain additionally acts as the chapter's official champion. These ties of brotherhood have given rise to inner chapter brotherhoods and occult societies that each worship the Emperor of Mankind in their own way, sort of like temples or lodges. The most notable and rumoured of these secret elite organizations amongst the chapter is the Order of Night, which is rumoured to be the elite task force made up of Sternguard veterans who have served dutifully within the Death Watch and have come to their chapter, there being only 3 so far in chapter history. Their armour is painted completely black, except for their shining silver pauldron and chapter pauldron ensign, and their Arnesian bear robes, which they had to kill and skin and make themselves as an initiation into the Order of the Night. They are assigned to lesser champions, who, with this entourage named the CERN, wander the galaxy performing brave and bold deeds to spread the good name of their chapter. The lesser champions comprise of 3 battle-hardened Gloam Strikers, whose names and records were stricken from the Fortress Monastery's histories, so that they will do their duty on the merit of their own strength and glory. None of them have yet to return. The current chapter champions have not been heard of for nearly 500 years since they departed on their first crusade in 409 M41. It is believed the CERN has been lost. Because of their low density, this is seen with much worriment and grievance within their numbers, as they struggle with recruitment and, as such, their numbers slowly dwindle. In consequence of this, the push for Gloam Strikers to survive has strengthened their will, and they will fight to the very last marine if their squads or platoons are slaughtered, not in the hopes to avoid shame from retreat, which no space marine ever does without good reason, but in the often vain but glorious attempt to distract and break apart enemy units and lines for as long as possible, so that other units could go unseen, either in exfiltration or in secret espionage. In these brave and suicidal acts of glory, the Gloam Strikers have embraced, in conjunction with their chapter cult of death preparation, their death as a whole chapter, and this pushes them to achieve as much as possible until their expected deaths in battle. A drive to create, preserve, compile and conserve pushes them towards acts of haughty engagement towards forces much larger than themselves, become shows of force and ingenuity, giving them a strong belief of self-reliance, and the aid of any outside source is to them a weakness to their own character, and a slash towards obtaining the full glory they themselves would acquire if they were not assisted by others. But sometimes begrudgingly, accepting of such assistance, they adapt to the circumstances and move on to see brighter days while they are counting them down. Many inherited relics and war gear items that the Marines gather from their mentors and superior officers consist of ancient, infinitely repaired and maintained Heresy-era and even Great Crusade-era lion-faced pauldrons, slabs of custom-made adamantium plating on their pauldrons, to the gifting of trophies long preserved from their chapter monastery's reliquary, such as ancient and famed chapter power swords, and scrolls and prayer passed down from the arcane knowledge of their occult worship societies. These mostly are not, in the rare occasion of such extremely valorous objects being bestowed upon those who truly have earned them, and most chapter-wide inheritance gifts are made up of skulls of Tyranids or orc skulls slain, ones who have given fierce battle and resistance. Their nature to scavenge wrecked vehicles and battlefields has left a very small few in great occasion to happen upon items of extreme importance and wealth to the chapter, such as that being Sergeant Ogaunt Dismas of the 3rd Platoon 1st Company wields the Saxton, an ancient and repaired power sword that was wielded once by the chapter master Hammergul. The handle of Saxton is adorned with golden runes, saying the name of the sword in the written language of the people of Arn, Ogum. This holy relic was discovered from an ancient, obliterated wreckage adrift in their system, left behind from the first days of the chapter's formation and the story of its creation. The star system of Arn consists of 3 other bodies outside of the single planet, closest to the star there, Lu, which lays just in frontal edge of the habitable zone, that being Arn. Beyond that, 2 gas giants and the world of Stellus, a minor forge world owned by the Adeptus Mechanicus, drift slowly and calmly. Classified as a jungle and death world, though much unlike Katakan, the sky of Arn is constantly covered by a thick, inky and blackened cloud layer that shrouds out most of the incoming sunlight, therefore making the surface of the planet a moist, shrouded world. The eternal darkness that clouds the world has left for the fauna and flora of the planet to be bioluminescent and nocturnally based. For the normal human, it would be as the night was moonless, and the barely visible environment would be unable to navigate without additional light sources. This is because most of the bioluminescence of the animalia and plant life is transmitted through infrared light, nullifying thermal vision to be impossible to use. The air on Arn under the black cloud layer, which covers the entirety of the planet, is hazardous and hot, unlike the cooling ground underneath it. It is filled with chlorine and trace amounts of sodium, and requires rebreathers or some forms of air filtration to allow even Astartes to take in bare minimum amounts of oxygen. The dense coverage of forest makes travel throughout the planet hard for large groups of individuals, and because of this, most of the larger animals of Arn tunnel underneath the ground. Steps often lead to pothole formations. The trees are covered in thick moss that releases infrared wave radiation, filling the air with intense heat. This brimstone moss recycles bacteria with the acidic properties of the atmosphere and gives off infrared as waste product. To add to the already unpleasant nature of Arn, greenhouse effect from the clouds that hold in carbon dioxide released from the plants of the canopy of the forest heats the air of the jungle to a point that it would singe the skin in the summer. The water of Arn forms minuscule rivers and streams that collect across the entire surface of its 3 continents and collects in the massive roots of trees. These cover near every 10 square feet of Arn and are commonplace to quickly evaporate and form areas of boiling steam that kills everything in its path. Several lakes across the surface of the continents are interconnected by massive caves that pool the water in large underground chambers. The ocean of Arn is a slimy, oily sea, slugged by the contents of the air molecules being trapped in air bubbles. Nothing is able to live within this inhospitable cocktail. The only human settlement of Arn is the hive city of Arnesia, of which its walls and gleaming ivory spires rise far above the black polluted clouds towards the bright cool blue sky. The sun of Arn bathes the city in a sterilizing white gold light which shimmers like a diamond off of the harsh glass and adamantium towers, golden archways and quartz statues that adorn the chapter's fortress monastery, which sits atop the highest spire of Arnesia, shining like an iron citadel among a metropolis of rocky snow-like buildings that are piled atop one another without mercy. The city is painted with white and light colors as to cool it from the harsh rays which blast it constantly with desert heat. The dry air above the clouds, however, is fresh and clean. The atmosphere itself allows cool winds to give some comfortable breathing room for the rich nobility who rule without thought or mercy over their workers who are numberless. Above these, only the most aristocratic and talented merchants and artists could afford. Below the clouds, the slime of the city in their billions toil and sweat and bleed ceaselessly to produce for their overlords the gleaming rich architecture and materials required to construct more of the city to accommodate its growing population. The base materials are brought in from Stellis, and any and all who are given the chance run to the Forge World to escape the dark, harsh environment that encapsulates them all, from the depths of the Underhive to the deepest mines. Scum from all corners run to the Mechanicum, despite their harsh nature being conservative. The life of being a servant is much preferable that of being less than a slave to the aristocracy of Arn. The pollution exasperated from the high chimneys tirelessly sputtering out smoke and other gases cloud the surrounding area with an unbreathable air and smog underneath the already blackened clouds. So most of the people there, who are not trapped in the terrible Underhive, don heavy-duty gas masks and cumbersome air tanks which are rationed. The city walls are harshly guarded from constant attack by a feral orc band that struggles itself to survive on the planet's surface, and an insect horde of monstrous creatures that hive throughout the planet. The Planet Defense Force is a heavily experienced and fortified presence that are experts at night fighting amongst the walls and surrounding areas of them. Although hardened, the guard there are scavengers and do not have an exact uniform, being known to have the potential of selfishness and a hoarding attitude, except when in the presence of their kindred. The culture of Arn is very tribalistic. Large families ranging into the hundreds sleep, eat, and live together in large housing blocks within Arnesia. Each block contains anywhere from 100 to 1,000 people, depending on how rich the block lord is able to fund. These block lords, usually wealthy tradesmen who employ these poor families, who in the long years of existing in this constant state of working, have built themselves a sort of inherited blood right to jobs in a caste system, find work and contract out their service, or families to all sorts of menial labor, from working various positions within the 10 manufactoriums that range from the middle upper hive to the acidic sludge lakes at the bottom of the underhive, where mutants and gangers are sometimes the least of the workers' worries. The blocklords also sell off these members, if they see fit, into slavery without question, for if any rebellion is sensed by them, as in Arnesian tradition now, entire families can be sold off and separated forever in the great vastness of the lower hive to other blocklords. This is practiced more or less, however, to keep the gene pool fresh in the hive, and cruelty can be seen as a virtue by the higher-ranking societies in the city to prevent the degeneration of their people, in a sense. If block members are orphaned, they are generally either thrown out of the PDF or sold as pleasure slaves to the reigning elite, where either they will be clasped eternally to the outside of the spires until they starve with chains wrapping around their scarred, burnt and naked bodies, tied to the harsh, boiling white gold surfaces of the high spires and towers which reflect the sunlight like mirrors in the highest extents of the planet's atmosphere, or die from sun poisoning or are forced the rest of their lives to become manservants or maids to the wealthy elite and artists. Art is still prized in Arnesia, as many people here are born to the machine and do not contain many skills outside of mechanical operation. Individualism is rewarded, of course, only to the upper caste and is punished in the workers, often leading to their families being sold off and mixed into other housing blocks. It is common competition among the elite to chain as many people to the outside of their gleaming pearlescent spires to show their wealth and power over their people. The people of Arn, or Arnians, descend from an ancient human colony that settled this world ever since the Great Crusade took place as a forward outpost to the Imperium, then to further colonization into the dangerous reaches of the Halo Stars. After the heresy cut them off, as more important local assets were obtained by both scouting traitor and loyalist forces, the people of Arn were forced to fend for themselves. After the third generation of the people of Arn were little more than raving, near blind, mad, and inbred, needing surviving archaeotech torchlights and lanterns fueled by human and animal fat to illuminate their way. The various tribes in their hundreds aligned themselves in semi-clans that would grow once families intermarried. Each clan was ruled by a warlord who commanded over several chieftains, each assigned to their own tribes. The meek and unworthy man-peasants incapable of hunting or fighting were either sacrificed to the sun, which people came to worship whenever it came peeking out from the black poisonous sky that scowled the people down below each day but opened up on extremely rare instances. The men who could only hunt were gifted with wooden spears to hunt with and torches, while the hunting band, called in their language a cern, was often handed down by the chieftain his own archaeotech weapon to keep the others in line, often either stub guns or even chainswords. Warlords were the only ones allowed, in Arnian culture, to carry war bows, and as such each warlord's bow was a sign of his dominance over the territory commanded. Cerns often hunted in the dangerous areas, where the massive insects and dangerous monsters that lurk the shadowy realms provide ample challenge for the hunters who often die. Lesser champions of the Gloom Strikers are given only bows to hunt the Arnian bear, the largest and the most dangerous creatures that inhabit the wilds around Arnesia. Even when they do successfully collect enough to eat, hunters eat the last in the tribe. The women and the warriors eat first. Most women in the Arnian clans only wed and reproduce with warriors, and often the orphaned girls and women are enslaved to either concubines of the warlords or sacrificed to the sun god, named by then Lu, by being sent into the forest without a light source to die. Similarly, each chieftain and warlord near his death would end his own life in the same fashion. The darkness was given godhood in their culture as well, and it was named Morgon. In the year 300 M39, an imperial expeditionary fleet, being safeguarded by a Sons of Antaeus transport detachment, happened upon the system of Arn. After surveying and cataloguing the planet, a scouting detachment from the Space Marine transport ship made planetfall. After discovering and performing multiple tests on the humans found there, it was determined that there was little chaos infection and no mutations within their ranks. For a time, Arn was left alone, with only a few Adeptus Ministorum outposts set on slowly converting the local populace. When the expeditionary fleet returned from their patrol in the year 402 M39, the entirety of all the clans and tribes were united under the ecclesiastical leadership of missionary priest Jacobus Arinian, who had been the product of the fully integrated Ministorum populace that intermarried with the tribes after earning their trust. Jacobus completely annihilated all the temples, worship sites, and idols constructed by the old chiefs and warlords. These men were either forced to convert to the imperial creed or fled to the forest. A lesser chieftain from the Midnight Hunters tribe of Arn had personally converted himself under the missionaries' watch and had been appointed divine magistrate and minister of Arn, and, using the enslaved tribes under the crushing power of the stationed Ministorum Crusader force that was given over command to him, as to show that the Imperium trusted his decisions, though never truly under his direct command, but rather under the command of the descendants of the exact Ministorum workers who came a generation before, like Jacobus, crowned himself King of Arn and was directly influenced by Jacobus. He had built a mighty walled city and named it Arnesia. Forcing the various tribes to relocate and toil under him, lest they be convicted of heresy and either be tortured to death or sent to the forest without a light source, made his tribe a royal family, and the Midnight Hunters earned their title as being the ruling noble house presiding in Arnesia. Over the time the populace of Arn had stayed, they had used crude filtration masks to breathe on Arn, from archaeotech masks for the warlords to animal gut for the peasants. Eventually, the people of Arn's site adapted naturally to the dark, but the light from the starship's engines, when they had returned, sent many of them blind. These blind ones were formed into a covenant with the Ministorum and formed the first religious order of the planet, the Convent of Darkness, and was the direct connection to the ecclesiarchy from Arn. Their justification that the engine burn of the starship of the Holy Imperium directly connected them for their experience from laying eyes on their technology. Today, the Order only recruits from the Underhive, which has blind workers found there. They exist in one of the highest spires as gatekeepers to the entrance of the Gloom Strikers' fortress monastery's Barbican. The Barbican is an armoured elevator that uplifts to the Grand Hall, which in itself is another grander elevator that leads to the Great Hall at the top of the spire. The Great Hall, however, is the actual front gate to the fortress monastery, and is guarded by the blind and silent Dark Covenant guards, who see with implants or by sensing vibrations. They wear white robes and black covers over their faces. The Grand Hall is coated in obsidian and glass, and inner decorum is reminiscent of the dark forest below. Wavy vines and asymmetrical figures representing the cave paintings of yore, when man and beast was equal on this world. Encrusted with gold and clasped in marble, depicted ancient tales of revelling and glory in the heroes of the mythologically historical past. Large stained glass windows showing victorious heroes of the chapters past ordain, all who see them in rainbows of colours. The Grand Hall is decorated with countless carpets and illustrious sitting areas spread over the great distance. A separate segment of bare metal was excluded solely for unit movement, behind a thin paper wall that arose until the eye couldn't see to its top, as it extended along with the elevator to the Great Hall, thousands and thousands of meters upwards. Illustrations and paintings are illuminated with candles and torches from behind, giving the illuminations a holy lighting. Behind this paper was a drab staircase that went all the way up and down, and was used only by the chapter when guests were appearing, or by acolytes to let them build their stamina and strength. The Great Hall was plated from the inside with gold, glass and hematite, the floor tiled with cracked obsidian. Lining the long walkway to a large pedestal shows the countless figures and statues of great heroes from Arn's short history, separate from the chapter's own figures. From here, a scriptorium and entrance to everywhere else can be found, outside of the fortress monastery, as it is available to guest use. Guests for the chapter, however, had to have been very important figures within imperial society, for not even nobles of Arnesia could enter. Separate glass archways for chapter use were carved straight from the volcanic streams of lava from Arnesia's volcanoes, where guests cannot see them in the darkness above them, gave off a radiance and beauty to Astarte's eyes. Around the outside was lining the various defense lasers and outer perimeter guard stations, spires that kept close watch over the 6 launcher pads and 2 shuttle silos, led a constant vigil and watch over the sapphire skies above. The chapter solitorium was a singular tall spire inaccessible to all other than through the means of aerial transportation. Here, a domed stone ceiling exposes the meditative to the merciless sun and arid air, the inside totally coated in black paint and obsidian, making the temperature there intense even for Astartes to withstand for a time. Here, the Penetorium is also located, where the heat was used as torture for non-Astartes trespassers. Despite their seclusion, the Space Marines of their chapter hold one holiday dear to their hearts. Every 300 years, the Gloam Strikers gather in their monastery, and here they feast and then slumber for 10 days. After these 10 days they hunt in the dark forests around them, bringing their food to the dark belly of the Underhive and Middle Hive to feed the poor workers there. And then they recruit from the hardiest and toughest they find there. They, who are in campaign or missing, are mourned with their dead and given rites of glorification within the chapter in reclusiac-led ceremonies with the various secret societies of the chapter, who show their heads and reveal themselves to new recruits who are attending their first mercy feast. Due to them recruiting every 300 years, this leaves their scouts to train longer and harder. Each tactical squad of Gloam Strikers comes with one scout under the direct command of the sergeant appointed. Each company's captain is appointed 2 chapter servants to act as his squires, helping communicate orders and serving as his watch, prepare his food, clean and maintain his gear, and carry his knowledge in large tomes. They also carry arms to protect themselves. The Gloam Strikers have a put-together Astartes fleet that gets their units where they need to get going, consisting of ancient ships gathered and outfitted for war. The greatest ship in their shoddy small fleet, however, is their most valuable one. The once derelict cargo ship, now named the Glorious Ancestry, is just an example of the Gloam Strikers scavenging and refitting gear to suit their needs. It is here that the enforcer of the chapter sits and directs his chapter when in war, and sends the commands of the chapter master Hamur Ghul, the first Gloam Striker who sits in total seclusion except for when the Mercy Feast comes to the world, out of the warriors of the chapter across the galaxy. In the closing year of the 41st millennium, the Great Rift has cut off all access to the Astronomicon, and it is not known if the chapter, now spread far too thinly across the galaxy, can ever relocate, or if there are any Gloam Strikers left alive. The chapter's first company, which has a platoon of Terminators in it, has been lost to the void, and the cherished armor along with. Now, Arn is separated from the rest of the stars outside its system, and waits for the day when the Great Rift closes again.